welcome. Welcome today to this very important event, Every Child's Right, a Manifesto pledge for emotionally healthy schools. And we are so excited because some of you probably know, actually, I can see some faces that have been here in the previous conferences that we've had on the topic. And it's so wonderful to see the development that is taking place, and of course, talk about what we hope to see in the schools. And what a year it has been, because it's been some very important developments that have taken place. Now, we're going to hear first from Dylan. Dylan, who came to the conference last year and whose honest and very raw intervention really helped us reflect on the importance and the need to stop school exclusions and the impact it has on emotional mental health for young people, children and young people. Just before Dylan starts, I just want to contextualize a little bit for those that you may not know this, but you might also do, but it's really relevant to repeat it. Every 10 minutes of a school day, a child is permanently excluded, and nearly 900,000 detentions are issued on every academic year. Now, this is a huge issue for our communities, a huge issue for children and young people. And so today what we're doing is that we are getting political leaders and our communities coming together to talk about the importance of bringing emotionally healthy schools that do not exclude children or bring punitive sanctions and punitive behavior policies that affect our young people. And why it's so important today is because elections are coming up on the 7th of May. And we do have proof that it can work, that we can bring it into people's manifesto. And so today we're going to hear from political leaders that are standing in elections, or that are leaders of movements across the country and political parties, to hear the commitment to this, to bring in the emotionally healthy schools across the country. But also, if you're not a political leader, or or you are maybe not heavily involved in politics, you can absolutely, and in fact, you are the engine for change for this movement, because as a resident, educator, or just a member of a community, a parent, you can absolutely demand your local candidates, and you can have these conversations. And today is hopefully is going to help you to do that, to learn what are the pledges that you need to demand from your local candidates, so we can see this change really happening in the country and really see an end to school exclusion. So that's me. Now, we're going to hear now first from Dylan Law. Now, Dylan came to, hello, Dylan. Dylan came to, well, Dylan, welcome home. You've been, this is your second or your third visit to Task. And we're so excited to have you, because last time when you came, your intervention was so raw, so honest, of your own lived experience of school exclusions. Now, you are in this unique position. At the time, we didn't know this, but you're standing as a councillor candidate in Hackney and potentially the deputy mayor for Hackney. So a lot of the policies that you as a Green deputy mayor will bring will affect thousands of people in Hackney. And I know that your heart is really in ending school exclusion. So it's really great to open with you to hear what is the commitment that you bring to bring in emotionally healthy schools where there is no school exclusions, and why it's so important. So thank you, Dylan, for being here today. And talk us through what's coming in your leadership and how you're going to bring school exclusion to an end, in Hackney.
Yeah, definitely to an end, 110%. Can everyone hear me all right? I'm not sure they can. Yeah?
Yes, we can hear you great. And thank you. Awesome.
I'm Dylan. I'm running for a council in Hackney Downs, but if our mayor candidate for the Greens wins in Hackney, then I'll become deputy mayor by nomination, which means I'll have a large amount of power and influence to change the direction and narratives that have been preconceived onto people like me. So, as some of you will know already, I went to Academy my whole life. Academy is a certain type of school which is allowed to make their own curriculum, but also they're allowed to do their own behaviour policies as well. Now, in Hackney specifically, that's often gone the wrong way down. And there's been a lot of different examples. Like, my personal experience was the black hair policies, which is what I call them, where they banned us from having afros, braids, but they said it wasn't racist because it's only about hair type. obviously only certain type of people with certain hair types will have afro and braids. So that was a thing. There's been other cases like the Mosborn report that came out, which spoke about like girls in their periods being told to sit down and keep it in, blood streaming down their legs. And these are things which are publicly available information and things that they consistently did throughout time. Even experience where a girl was shot by a firework and the teachers the next day, when she was too scared to go outside, decided to berate her. These are grown 6 foot men, my height and size, who are berating a child who would have been like 5'5" and a female as well. So going through with that experience, as someone who's now wanted to be in a leader position, I instantly wanted to have like a very hard take against it. The only issue is academies, as I said, aren't under council rule. They are under their own. So the next option was to start using some levers, right? So as someone who would want to be in that role, the number one thing I'd want to use is safeguarding of children as a leverage to go against academies, especially where discrimination, which we know is in place, to prove it, and then use that against them to stop school exclusions, and especially school exclusions which come under discrimination. And I know also people with SEND. I got some FOI data with some people from all academies, or I got 4 academies, the rest declined. I got some FOI data which showed that schools what's the word I'm looking for? Disproportionately excluded those with SEND and ethnic backgrounds a lot more than their white counterparts. So these kind of things, if the council did bat against it, which they currently don't do, they would be able to stop a lot of exclusions in their place. That's only the first step. I mean, one of the things that I would absolutely love to have, and hopefully we can advocate for, is to get control or get intervention powers. Now, something which I don't think we're necessarily going to get, but if we could absolutely get that, we would be able to directly intervene where academies exclude people disproportionately. But a bigger conversation is about detentions. Now, I think 12 out of 16 schools in the borough are academies, not our council-run schools. And even if you get the detention data, which I did at FY for as well, you see that the same patterns in exclusions show up in detentions. Now, for those of you who don't know, when a child gets excluded, it usually goes through a process. And this is the kind of process that I went down, then got out of. So they will start by giving you detentions for minute things. So dropping pens, talking, rah-ta-ta. But then instead of doing normal detentions like other schools do, they'll upgrade them, right? So if you fail a 20-minute detention, they'll instantly upgrade it to a 60-minute. Then they'll instantly upgrade it to a 2-hour. And on paper, you start to see a trail of you misbehaving, but your misbehavior getting worse and worse and worse. After you fail the 2 hours, they start giving you internal exclusions. So you have to stay in a room where you're there for 8 hours a day. They're meant to give you water. Oftentimes they don't. They're meant to let you go to the toilet. Oftentimes they don't. It depends how your behavior is. But they'll give it or leave it as they see fit. And then they'll start upgrading it through a reflection or exclusion, whatever they want to call it. Then they'll do 1 day, 3 day, 5 day. Then they'll exclude you externally, where they'll do 3 day, 5 day, 8 day, and then 16 day. If you ever fail the school, you can even fail the exclusion by coming into school, right? You then get permanently kicked out, and your whole paper trail shows you've gone from minute behavior to extreme behavior, even if you're doing the exact same thing and it's not that bad. So I think the only realistic solution I can see, because we don't have the powers to intervene with academies directly apart from safeguarding. Someone says it's a prison. It absolutely is a prison, but that's beside the point. The only tool that I see is advocacy. We're lucky in this borough to have a mayor who's directly elected, and I feel like that mayor and deputy mayor position can be used to advocate for people who may not understand the situation that some kids are going through. And I feel like there's a position there to leverage public opinion against certain schools if it needs be. Now, there's things we could do, such as reporting to Department of Education and give all the evidence. But if the Department of Education refuse to comply or refuse to reduce the academy's rank down to a normal school, which I'm not sure they could do, then the only position I see fit is to back what parents are saying through the council's authority. And hopefully it's only at that point the academy will start seeing, actually, no, we can't consistently exclude people disproportionately. Otherwise, the public are going to go against us, because at the end of the day, it's those parents who attend those schools. Some people have told me before it's not going to work. My response to that, there was one lady who's my friend's mum. She was told that he can't come into school because of his haircut, because he had shorter sides. It was afro hair, shorter sides and top. So she just refused to let him go to school. They said he's not allowed until he changes his haircut. So she just said, okay, you're not going in. She took it to Hackney Gazette, she took it to Hackney Citizen. They printed it, and Mosborn folded. They eventually let him back in. My point is, if one parent can do that, then a council backing up parents can do that a lot easier as well. If as a council we go and say, we not only don't support this, but we will back you up if you don't support this too, then there is absolutely no way these candidates consistently go against what we're saying. Like, their main operating system is targeting vulnerable people, right? I always say this to people, like, if academies did this to upper class families, it would not run. Right, there's a reason because of that. The upper class families don't necessarily have more constitutional power than the working class families do. Is that the influence changes? The council has a similar amount of influence, and if they leverage that to people's benefits, a lot of those candidates will fold. And in this situation, that this did work, which I believe it would, we wouldn't actually lose any official levers that we have. It'll be things like advocacy, and it'll be using public opinion and our own relationship with residents. So that's my commitment. Yeah, go on. We can say,
Do you
Claudia.
think, well, there's just so much to say, and you can see people commenting in the chat. So two things. I think what you just said really proves the whole purpose of our campaign, which you're very much part of, Dylan, because really was, part of you coming here and your interventions when Diane also came, youth workers, educators, young people that spoke as well, that it really needs to be driven by children and young people's voices, right? And this is the whole concept of emotionally healthy schools. The commitment is to bring emotionally healthy schools where we move away from the school exclusions and harsh behavior, punitive behavior policies. And that where you say that, young people are not being heard, that is why they need to be at the center. But can I just ask you, on the point that you make about what if the council actually helped and listened to that young person? And I kind of feel I know the answer, and I kind of feel that I know what you're going to say, but we need to say it publicly. Is this a matter of lack of political will, Dylan? What do you think about it?
Come on, you know it is. You know it is.
It's just we need to
It's
say it.
silly.
But Dylan, we need
They
to say
have.
it. This is the whole, yes.
I don't want
And
to go
what
on
would you do?
rambles. Like, I've been trying to for the past, like, the 10 minutes before this call, I was saying don't go on a ramble because people will start getting bored. But like, you know it is, right? Like, the people who sit in that
100%.
chamber have never gone to academy in their life. I've been to academy my entire life. All my siblings have gone to academies. I've gone through that system, right? There is no way I'm going to get there in day one. I was like, sorry, lads, can't do it. Do you know what I mean? I have nothing to lose from this. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's a
Well,
blatant
this
thing.
is
Even if you say that you don't recognize that an academy exclusion goes ahead, I'm telling you, as someone who 5 years ago, right? Or was it even 2 years ago when I finished mainstream education, as someone who's been through that process, if a council came up to me and said, we don't recognize that exclusion, you've done nothing wrong, in that situation, that's going to make you feel better, right? Because for the first time, you're not going to think the only person on your side is you. Do you know what I'm saying? When an institution backs you up on what you're saying, obviously in the right cases, but like, that makes a massive difference, even just because you're saying words. So when the council's current position is, oh, there's nothing we can do because constitutionally we can't affect academies, I think that's a lot of niche. But yeah.
absolutely. And I think we have had enough of this rhetoric or narrative where we hear in the council, and it's not just exclusive to Hackney Council. We really need to be very open about that too. This is a national issue. It's to me, it's a crisis that really needs urgent change. And I think emotionally healthy schools will bring that, in that there is that commitment. I think a lot of us were really looking forward to a new government that would potentially come and change the policies, that sort of like protection that academies have had for so many years in the name of grades and the national league table, sorry. But it hasn't changed. And in fact, the children's well-being and the school paper doesn't move away from taking punity systems away from the schools. That remains. So, isolation, detentions, and permanent exclusions continue to be part of what the resources of academies can use. And this is what we need to move away from. So thanks so much, Dylan, for that. Just as a last message, what else would you say, I don't know, we have, a bunch of people here that are really committed to young people's mental health. And, you said it yourself, if you had the support, just even to be listened and heard and trusted, things would have been different. We wouldn't have so much breakdowns of, also affects parents, affects family and our community. I do see young people as assets of our society, that you are a big pillar of our community. What would you say as a last message to everyone that's in here, in terms of like, let's get out and make, candidates accountable and bring this to a pledge for every candidate across the country?
What I say to someone who's a mental health professional, oh, well, this room is, isn't it? So I would say to all of the people who are mental health professionals, counsellors, etc., don't underestimate, which I don't think you do already, but don't underestimate your influence on a child's mind. There's been several times I've spoken to people who, like even in CAMS, and I was very dismissive, very go away, ratata. But in the back of my head, I was clocking onto what they're saying, and it's still things I remember now. And I would say that a lot of my friends is similar stories. It's just because the issues we face were so systemic that your whole like facade is just go away. Do you know what I'm saying? Now that's not everyone, but I'm saying
Sure.
yeah, just don't underestimate like the direct power you have over people who are under 18 years old, because a lot of times you're saying things that they've never heard in their life, and it's going to take time to get through. Do you know what I mean? Because that was my case.
And just as a last point, and that I think really goes into what I wanted to ask you last, because a lot of people in the electorate as well. I mean, we have a high population of people that don't vote. I come from a country with highly politicized. 93% of people vote in elections. And in here, we have places where 13, 14% of people vote, to the most is 30%. What would you tell the electorate, Dylan, as well? Like, how can we support, what can we do to support, the emotional healthy schools politically? How can we tell the electorate to support it?
To support the idea of emotionally healthy schools.
Mm.
To be honest, I think they need to see it, but like
Mm.
I think if it's
Yeah.
not going to be if it's going to be a thing where they need to hear something first before they see it, then I think breaking down misconceptions by very simplistic steps. So you say, this is what you want to do. You want to do A, B, and C and D. And I mean, this is not just me speaking. This is something that's what I'm talking about. Like generally, so you want to get someone on board, someone who's apathetic to getting someone who's politicized. They're going to want to hear things which make sense to them. And for a lot of people, that'll be emotional. It won't necessarily be logical. It'll be things which relate to them. So if you want to, rather than talking about Children Act of 1989, right, for example, you may want to say, actually, the council has this statutory duty to kids. We, as a program or organisation, want to implement it in through this method, right?
Mm.
And this is one how you want to get your kids involved. That would make more sense, get through a lot more than the alternative, if that answers the question.
Amazing. Well, Dylan, compañero, camarada, future Deputy Mayor of Hackney,
We'll
thank you
see.
so
We'll
much for
see.
making time for today. Well, I think, there is a lot of support, and we're doing something historic in Hackney. I mean, I'll come to talk about what we're doing in a little bit later, and I have a little presentation, but that includes as well the work that we've been doing. Dylan, thank you so much. We really look forward to seeing emotionally healthy schools in Hackney, and I'm just so delighted that Hackney, as always, is a revolutionary borough. So I'm so happy about that.
Well, so I'm
Thank you,
going to need a
Dylan.
lot of support if I win. So thank you very much. I'll see you in a bit.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Whoever is in Hackney Downs is the candidate.
Thank you. I'll see you in a bit.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much. See you soon. See you soon. Amazing, amazing. Right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the comments and the support as well for Dylan and for what we are trying to achieve. I'm going to move on now to speak. I believe Jeremy Corbyn has arrived, and just before he arrives, as he settles in, I will read a special message that Diane Abbott has sent us. As you may know, Diane joined us in the very first conference, which was extremely successful, and Diane feels extremely committed to this topic. And so I will read her statement for us, because she couldn't be with us today. You might have seen that Parliament is rather busy these days of late. For those that don't know, we're closing municipal years as well, so all of us are sort of a bit busy. So I'm going to read Diane Abbott statement. I am sorry that I am unable to join you this evening, but I wanted to express my strong support for this campaign and for the work that you are all doing. I want to briefly place this issue in a wider context. We are living through a period of deep inequality, where the most disadvantaged in our society are bearing the brunt of economic pressure and public service cuts. And it is those same children, working class children, Black children, and those with special educational needs who are most affected by harsh behavior policies and exclusions in our schools. We are told these approaches are about standards, but too often they punish distress instead of understanding it. And they push the most vulnerable young people out of the very system meant to support them. I am very clear that emotionally healthy schools are not an optional extra. They are essential. And they must be built on support, fairness, and a commitment to every child's well being, not just attainment. This manifesto pledge is an important step in holding decision makers to account and ensuring that no child is made to feel they do not belong in their own school. Thank you again for your work and for continuing to push this issue onto the political agenda. Thank you, Diane. That's really beautiful. I'm going to give a little clap because Diane is extremely passionate about this topic and has been a very strong voice, especially for children that are disproportionately affected by these school exclusions and behavior policies, making very clear statements and very clear messages around the direction, the link between school exclusions and prison for young people. So I'm really delighted. Thank you, Diane. We're all saying thank you, and I hope you're having a good evening in a very busy parliament. Right. I believe we're now going to. Do we have Jeremy in the room? We're going to welcome Jeremy Corbyn, who is also extremely committed to this issue. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here today. We are, as you know, we really do appreciate your commitment to bringing mental health support for young people and how you also think that emotionally healthy schools are going to be the step forward to end exclusions, school exclusions that really affect young people and detentions. Please feel free to sort of share your message and the commitment you're bringing to making sure that this happens across the schools within the powers that you have and the leadership that you have in the country. We really appreciate you and looking forward to hearing from you.
Do we go into a discussion first, or have you got other speakers?
You're speaking now, and then we're gonna bring discussion. So people can come in and also share their thoughts about what they want to see also in school exclusions sort of ending in harsh behavior policies. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, it does, yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, the things I'd like to talk about are the issue, obviously, of school exclusions, but also the issue of mental health crises that people face, and access to mental health services, and also then, perhaps more importantly, what we do about it. Because, first of all, I'm personally very skeptical about about school exclusions as a policy. I'm not saying I'd never say absolutely never, but I think as a policy in the past, it's often been too easy for schools to exclude students who are usually going through enormous difficulties. And because of all the pressures on the school of staff, time, and everything else, they're not able to give the consideration that they should to each student. And so sometimes they end up getting excluded. And I can think of the number of children in my own community where the parents have been to see me about their exclusion. You then discuss it with the school and so on. And you can see, yes, there was a behaviour issue, there were issues, but you also really wonder, well, couldn't these issues have been addressed much earlier on and much better rather than ignored? And so you get to a sort of crisis point. And the process of school exclusion is emotionally damaging for the child, however much bravado they might put on it at the time. And it is obviously educationally usually a big problem. And if they end up being placed in a pupil referral unit, which sometimes they do, then again, I'm not saying all pupil referral units are bad, but I'm just saying that sometimes it's very hard for a student to get out of a PRU, and that is their education. Some do, and some do very well, but too many don't. The second question is the one of the mental health stress of young people. And I'm constantly surprised by the number of young people that I meet in various situations all over the country who openly ask me, saying, "What are you doing about mental health amongst young people?" Now, in some ways, it's a good thing. In some ways, it's a good thing they want to ask questions and demand something is done. That's a positive. But the other side of it is, it seems very sad that a 12-year-old should be asking adults about how to deal with mental health. When I was 12 years old, I barely knew what a mental health condition was. It wasn't, maybe that's because in that era, nobody ever talked about it. And they usually occasionally called it nervous stress, but that was the most it ever got to. But amongst young people, it was something that was never talked about, and a lot of it was very hidden, and that is also a problem. And so it is about explaining to young people that there is nothing wrong with having a mental health problem. You have it for many reasons: family, community, pressure, self-esteem or lack of self-esteem, and so much else, which then leads you into the question of why, as a society and community, we don't have much greater understanding of the needs of people, the social needs of people all the time, because that is often completely missing. And school students are really being constantly given a mixed message. The mixed message is, one, that their school has got to be successful, that they've got to do well in the league tables, they've got to get good exam results, and so on, in a very competitive mode. But then the other side of it is they're told they've got to look after each other in the community. I'm not saying the two things are totally mutually exclusive, but the message and method of the message being given is very different for the two things. And underachieving youngsters in school are then prey to all sorts of other things, and that's when the problems happen as a result of that. Now, I get parents coming to me who believe their son or daughter has a profound mental health condition, and they want some help in dealing with that condition. You then refer them to CAMS or whatever, or school mental health services. Sometimes it works very well. Sometimes they're very good and they do give the support and therapy they should. But quite often they have to wait a very, very long time. And that waiting means that in the mind of the young person, their issue is not being taken seriously because nobody's done anything about it. And they continue with those levels of stress. And so that means the question of access to mental health services is a key one, and an explanation of it. There is also the perceptions of mental health in the public, in communities, and within families. And often people are just afraid to talk about it and say they've got demons. They feel very threatened by something. And the level of the ultimate problem of usually young men taking their own lives is a very, very serious one. And that does happen. It happens quite a lot. And dealing with the consequences of anyone's life that's been taken by themselves is devastating and very hard to explain. But I have friends whose children have taken their own lives at the age of sort of 16, 17. And it's very, very hard to make sense of it. Very hard to understand why, particularly when in some cases they appeared to be doing well and quite successful. I mean, I've had friends who've taken their own lives, and some of them you sort of can rationalize it and almost understand it. Others, you couldn't believe such a thing would happen because they had clearly had enormous stresses within their own mind, but never displayed it at all. Maybe I'm not smart enough to have noticed the stresses that were there. Maybe nobody else noticed them as well, but it does happen. So what I hope we can have a discussion about, and I'm very interested in the ideas you'll bring forward, is one, identifying mental health stress amongst young people. Two, approaching it in a appropriate non-combative way, and then educating the school community on inclusive education rather than the more exclusive model, which usually leads to either exclusion from school, suspension from school, or movement to another school, or a PRU or something like that. And students constantly moving schools, particularly secondary schools, is very, very damaging to them in lots of ways. And if you're in a social media age, as we are, there is sadly hardly any hiding place for a young person who's been excluded from a school because social media picks it up. And then the pressure of social media on young people becomes very great indeed. I want to stop there because those are just a few thoughts I had, and I'd like to then let's go into discussion. So over to you, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Well, the last point is, I mean, all of the points are really important, but just 2 nights ago, we were looking at data in terms of mobility of children leaving the schools and how that impact in Hackney, how that impact their mental health. And some claims were made that people leave the council, leave the borough because also they look for bigger houses and bigger gardens in the countryside. But I think majority of it is because people cannot afford to live in London, and this also affects young people's mental health. We have a few people that want to ask, maybe just come in and contribute and be part of the discussion before you go, because I know you have a very busy night as well, Jeremy. We have Mick and then Omar. Mick, welcome, Mick. I think you've met before. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for joining us, Jeremy. What I wanted to ask you is how can we get the kind of issues that you talked about and you talked about so passionately, and it was great to hear. How can we get those onto progressive agendas? What more can we do to try and get the kind of issues of young people's mental health and well-being right at the heart of socialist politics so that it's taken seriously in a way that maybe it hasn't been to as much as we'd like to up to now?
We held, I do monthly forums in my constituency as a way of me reporting back on what I'm doing, but also giving space to different issues. And we held a mental health forum, and we had mental health first aiders who volunteered to be there, which was very kind of them because I was kind of worried some people might find it difficult. And we then invited people from different communities and groups to talk about issues. And it was actually very therapeutic. And there were some teachers there who felt that this was really helpful because it meant that the voice of those with mental health conditions could be raised in a collective way rather than the embarrassment, and it is usually an embarrassment, of a parent turning up at a school function and then tries to raise the issue of mental health amongst young people, and the whole audience knows it's their child they're talking about. And that is just embarrassing, and they don't want to do that. So it is, I think, about bringing people together to give that sense of the collective. In your experience, do young people talk to each other about mental health conditions, or is it something they just make jokes about and move on?
I think that they're beginning to. I mean, certainly if I think about my kids, they do talk about it with their friends and they get some support. But I think that they are, being able to be open about it varies a lot. And I think some, like around particularly where they got more kind of rigid notions of masculinity, I think that really gets in the way for young guys.
What about girls?
I think my sense is, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear whether, women here feel that they talk more, but that's my sense that there's a bit more openness in those conversations.
Mm. We have, thank you, Mick, and thanks, Jeremy. We have we have a few people with their hands up. We won't have time to take all
Why
of
not take everybody
them.
to speak, Claudia? Then we'll all come back. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do. Okay, camarada. What's he say? Well, Jeremy has a thing. We always wanted to respond and speak to everyone. I was just mindful of your time, Jeremy. That's all. Omar, we're gonna hear from Omar, then Laura, and I believe we have a few questions in the chat, which are really, really, really key questions.
Let me
Omar,
look at those.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Jeremy, for giving me the opportunity to ask you a question. Years ago, my mum and my stepdad went to a rally, and we've got a signed T-shirt by you because I voted for you in one of the elections years back. But the question is, I'm just wondering what your opinion is on nature-based interventions for children. I've recently, well, in the last couple of years, wrote 2 articles, one on eco-walking and one on eco-relaxation. And on the eco-relaxation article, which is included in the manifesto, it's about regulating emotions for children. And as somebody who's got ADHD, I found at school that I used to get kicked out the classroom, but I would be daydreaming and looking at potential countryside, and I would always feel attention restored. So the research is there, but I was just wondering your opinion about having that kind of idea at school where there is an opportunity for children to eco-relax and to be around nature, especially when they're dysregulated.
Absolutely. My first memory of school was my parents sent me to a Catholic school when I was 5 years old. I've no idea why, because neither of them are Catholics, but they sent me there. I've no idea why. And so I wasn't allowed into any of the church services they had or what passed for the religious instruction lessons for the class. This is, remember, years 1 and 2, maybe 3 of a primary school. It was really weird. So, and it was in Wiltshire. So I was told when they were having these events to go and walk around the playing field. So I did. I walked around the playing. I loved it. I looked at the hedges, I looked at the birds, I looked at the animals, I looked at the grass, I looked at the flowers. I absolutely loved it. It was no punishment, no stress for me whatsoever. It did me a lot of good, probably. I've also noticed in schools where we've got an effective nature intervention or growing club of some sort, the kids get very excited and very proud of it. In it, and that then changes their complete understanding of lots of other things. And so one school that's done that very well, it's just outside your borough, is Newington Green School. Have done really well on that, and I admire them for it, what they've done. So I'm just going to plug my I don't sort of.
You okay, Jeremy?
Laura, it's Laura's computer, that's why, I think.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Laura, la computadora.
Larita.
That's brilliant.
And so
we're gonna have
I do think growing clubs are important. The last thing I'd say is I also have been involved, particularly when my own kids were younger, with woodcraft folk, and taking a group of kids on a camp is, as many of you probably experienced this as parents, it's there's no charger. They come on a camp and they suddenly realize that the skills required in lighting a fire, cooking a meal, finding your way around, understanding what the animals are, what birds are, what the natural life is very different from totally academic skills. And suddenly they all start doing things together in a very good way. I absolutely agree with anything to do with growing or understanding nature is absolutely essential. We've got to understand the natural world we live in, otherwise we're going to destroy it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. We have Laura, and then there is a question which we have on the chat, which is really pertinent question. But Laura, you go first, and then I'll ask the last question, and we're going to start wrapping up with this part with Jeremy.
Thank you.
Are you okay, Jeremy, with charter now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Laura, welcome.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to first of all share my reflections. I work in a community CAMS team at the moment, but prior to that, I'd been a play therapist and worked in schools and worked with local authorities. And I think one of the issues we need to think about is the complexity of the roots of the mental health crisis. And I think in terms of the kind of political landscape, and if we're going to have a government that starts to think about these things, and my hope is that we might at some point, then we need to understand the kind of intricacies of social care and the impact of poverty and all these things, but also, like has been spoken about, school and the policies of school. And it could be we're talking about behaviour and exclusions, but it could be around school avoidance, it could be around the mental health crisis. All of these things have really complicated beginnings that actually need an understanding at a systemic level. And I think one of the concerns I have is that we are locating the pathology in individuals, whether that's through exclusions and bad behaviour, which I don't actually think isn't a thing, or whether it's to do with mental health diagnoses and the over-medicalisation of children. What we're not doing is thinking about what is exacerbating this suffering. And, the fact we have these rigid systems where there is no resourcing, but also no mindset. I know often the argument is around resourcing, but I argue that it's not always financial resources, it's also people's attitudes. And I think we really need to think about how do we change people's thoughts around what is important in a child's life as they grow up. What do we need to be offering? And academic punitive school systems isn't enough. It just isn't.
Absolutely.
So
I think
my
a lot of
question
people
is,
are clapping.
how are we going to politically make it that schools are accountable, that we understand society and children's needs in a more child development focused way and understand the systemic problems? How are we going to bring that into politics and make it happen?
Jeremy. I was going to say with Jeremy as our Prime Minister, but please go ahead, Jeremy.
How do we make it happen? There's a lot of competing stuff to go into school curricula, and there is also the wish that many of us have that teachers be given more space to develop their own ideas and look at doing things together as a class, achieving things together. So there's often sort of competing demands there. The government is very determined to increase testing and what they call achievements in school. And so my view was always and is that we should reduce the amount of testing in school and have teacher-led assessments of a child's progress rather than Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and then the new testing at a Year 8 testing that's coming in. I think that means the whole school becomes obsessed with what's going to happen with the testing. The children become very stressed because of it, and so it goes on. And then you have parents who are deeply worried that their child is underachieving in school, so they then end up, even if they can't really afford it, paying a tutor to try and get the kid ready for the key stage testing, which is terrible. Surely we want our children not to be frightened of learning and frightened of education, but be part of that process. And so how do we get that in with difficulty? How do we get in the idea of consciousness and awareness of the mental health needs of people? I think that you do that by partly the training teachers get, but also the add-on courses they get. And last thing I'd say on this is in schools, the reality is that, in particularly in secondary schools, mixed ability teaching class is very hard work for a teacher. Even a very good teacher is still very hard work. Trying to keep the class together, realizing you've got students working at different pace and different interests. So therefore you do need teaching assistants that have sufficient training. They can support and help out the most needy children. In every school I go to, the first thing that seems to get cut are teaching assistants, music and art lessons. They're the ones that always go. And they're actually the three ingredients that are probably the most important to help inclusion in the school and help children that are maybe not achieving so well at the traditional academic subjects to be able to have a greater sense of self-esteem. So it does actually, a lot of it come down to funding as well. And as many of you know, I'm sure you know it better than me, that you've only got to get in a class of 30, you've only got to get 2 children having a really bad episode and a really bad day, and there's very little else you can achieve in that class the whole day, because you've got to deal with those 2 children. They deserve attention and deserve support just as much as everybody else does, but clearly they're not in a position to negotiate their demands. They're just in a position to make them. So it is about funding, and it is about having that backup system.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you, Laura, for such a brilliant question and really key question. Have I got all frozen? No. Okay. Jeremy, before you go, we have just one more person, Consuelo, who she is leading a parents group, support group for parents in Sadak for families with children with SEND needs. She will speak in Spanish and I will translate, but I know that you're bilingual and you speak Spanish too, but she prefers to speak in Spanish. Consuelo?
Bit of an exaggeration to call me bilingual, but I do understand.
Well, we have
you're
talked in
very
Spanish,
generous,
Jeremy.
Claudia.
Well,
Consuelo.
Jeremy, I have heard you. We have had long conversations in Spanish. I'll call you, I think you're bilingual to me. Consuelo, you're here. So nice to see you.
Good
Gusto verte,
evening.
Consuelo.
Thank you so much for this meet. It's very important. My level English is a little because every day I try for the increase. Bueno, buenas noches. Muchísimas gracias, Claudia, y muchísimas gracias, Jeremy, por estar aquí. Sí, efectivamente, somos Familia y Autismo UK. Y la gran problemática que tenemos, el acceso a tener una plaza en las escuelas especiales. Pero aparte de eso, es muy importante lo que están debatiendo, el tema de la salud mental. Yo quiero que se queden hoy con un mensaje que la salud mental sí que afecta a los jóvenes y a los niños, pero también como estudiantes, por todo el sistema escolar de no tener unas normas, unas reglas o un proyecto que prevenga y que llegue al estrés, que lleven al estrés a los estudiantes y por lo tanto dejar la escolaridad, pero que también nos está afectando enormemente a nosotros los padres. La salud mental de nosotros los padres, de los estudiantes con alguna condición especial como el autismo, nos está generando problemas grandes. Problemas
Voy a
grandes
traducir.
por el estrés que nos genera toda la tramitología para poder tener acceso a las escuelas especiales. Y en segundo término, para que cuando el diagnóstico está, duran 3 hasta 4 años para que se implemente el HCP, ese plan de educación que se convierte en un documento, pero que en la realidad no se ejecuta dentro de la escuela como tiene que ser, en darle las oportunidades a estos alumnos con las terapias que realmente necesitan y con el apoyo del one-to-one. Entonces estamos llevando a la crisis a estos niños a tenerlos en un aula reducido durante horas con un acompañante, pero que realmente no les está haciendo para nada bien, sino al contrario, está incrementando.
Voy a traducir eso. Gracias. Anoté
Gracias.
todo. Gracias, Consuelo. So,
Gracias.
Jeremy, the main point made by Consuelo, I'm going to interpret, not translate. So it's, the main concern is around how do we access special schools for children, SEND children. because the 2 points that Consuelo described is that A, it really, of course, affects the mental health for young people and children with SEND. And once the EHCP is issued, it can take a long time. And this document means a lot to the young people and SEND families that really need that as a way of getting further support. But we know that I think there is in some councils, 70% of these health plans are not issued, and so families have to wait a long time. What can we do to make sure that A, children can access those schools, which are not many available or places, and how can those healthcare plans also be issued faster? Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Consuelo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Quédese ahí
Thank
para
you,
que
Claudia.
mientras responde Jeremy.
Consuelo, thank you very much for your question. Very good. I've just been through the miserable experience in Islington of trying to prevent 2 schools from closing, both on the Hackney borders, Highbury Quadrant, and the other one was St Jude's and St Paul's School, which is a church school just almost in Dalston. And both of those schools had a very high percentage of SEND pupils. Both of those schools had, in my view, a very good record in support for SEND, and the parents felt appreciative and valued by the school. The school made a very important priority of supporting those children, and that's why one of the reasons why they were so very, very upset at the decision to close the schools. I find that the incentive to deal with SEND issues is a negative one. If a parent or a pupil presents themselves to school and claims they have special needs, the school may well look at it. They may well eventually get an assessment done, and it may well be eventually they will either be sent to a special provision or get more support in the school. Each local authority knows full well that it has finite resources. Therefore, there's a positive disincentive to the education department of each local authority to deal with it appropriately, because they know it's going to cost them a lot of money, and they know in costing them a lot of money, it's going to go on for a very long time. So you could be talking, if you think of a normal pupil allocation of, say, for argument's sake, 5,000 a year, a SEND student could have easily require double or more than that in order to get the support that they need. And so there's a disincentive to do it. The government kind of recognizes there is a problem, has set up a SEND budget and does put more money into some local authorities, which I think is obviously it's better that resources go in than don't go in. But 2 things: I don't think they're putting enough in, or fully understand that SEND is in some ways a cry from the heart because of the lack of funding of the capitation allowance in the first place in schools. It comes down partly to a funding issue. Over special education provision, I'd be interested in your views on this. As I said at the beginning, I'd never say never on special schools, but I honestly think that integrated education is a much better way forward, because it brings up all children together, whatever their needs and abilities are, and that gives them better understanding as adults of the needs of other people, rather than the exclusivity of the high achievers riding off into the sunset while the rest of them are all left behind. And so I do think it improves and changes attitudes. And we have a number of nurseries in my borough. One of them I was very proud of was called Margaret Macmillan Nursery, which was specifically designed for children with physical disabilities as well as other issues, as an integrated one. And you then realize that many of those children are growing up with a far better understanding of the needs and abilities of other people, despite whatever problems they might have, than they would otherwise get. So there's a kind of plus all round on it. I'd never say never, but to me, special schools and special education should be further resort rather than the first resort.
Thank you so much. ¿Entendió, Consuelo, la mayoría de lo que dijo? Sí, yes, so
creo que lo entendí.
super.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you, Claudia.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we won't have time now because we also had a group that we will have more sessions on this. We have a group from Bolivia, Capacitación y Derechos Ciudadanos, that are also doing work around school exclusions. That have been doing it for years, and I was really pleased that they're joining us today. So really good to have you in the room, and everyone. We're gonna wrap up. Jeremy, thank you so much for your intervention, for your support and the commitment and the pledge that you make to emotional healthy schools. Thank you, Jeremy.
My absolute pleasure. Well done you for organising this, and happy to give it further consideration. And what I would like to do is organise locally in Islington a forum on special needs education, which obviously we could make it a bit wider so others could join in, because I do think it's very, very important. I'd be very interested to work with you on that. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. And with the group here, mental health network that we have. Amazing. Thank you, Jeremy. We're going to, and I'll see you soon. We're gonna see you for the fundraiser for Cuba. So I'll be there in half an hour.
Right.
I might be a bit late, Jeremy. See you soon. Well, we're gonna start wrapping up. We're gonna just wrap up very briefly on. Sorry, we're gonna run over 2 more minutes, if that's okay. Most of you now have to get going, and thank you so much. In Hackney, we have made great progress in bringing this progressive agenda to our manifesto. The Hackney Independent Socialist Collective has brought the commitment to join the emotionally healthy schools pledge to bring to Hackney. So we really hope that coming May elections, we are absolutely committed to making it happen. And it has come at the back of, you know, a lot of national headline news that we made in Hackney, given what has happened in the Mossburn Academy, the deputation that we brought to council, and what led to the council becoming very committed and dedicating a municipal year to exclusions, scrutiny of exclusions in Hackney. So it is possible. So please feel free to speak to your local candidate. We're going to share the links with you also of what we hope to be slides that we're going to share as well, so you can feel very empowered and full of knowledge on how to hold your candidates accountable. Mick, next to you, sorry, back to you, and just wrapping up.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I guess I just want to say thank you to Claudia and Jeremy, Diane, Dylan, everybody who's been involved in speaking. It's been a fantastic event. I think we all know with the violence and the kind of the war and the conflict around, whether it's in Gaza or Ukraine or Iran, just how much we need a kind of new generation of young people who can work and understand peace, who can understand what their feelings are, and to talk about that and to talk about things in constructive ways. And the work that we're doing around trying to develop nurturing, caring schools is part of a global project, really, and to try and create a different kind of space, different kind of world, different kind, right from the kind of local boroughs right to the biggest global problems. And so we're really enormously grateful for everyone here coming along today, this evening. Thank you so much. The most exciting thing, I think, is the work that Claudia's been doing, the fact that we've actually got this in a manifesto. There is an emotionally healthy schools proposal that's been costed and that can be taken forward. It's a manifesto pledge, and it's something that we can now disseminate and bring out. So thank you so much for everybody,
Mick,
for all your work.
sorry.
Claudia.
Breaking news, we have someone asking us on the chat, how do organizations register to this pledge? So we're going to be sharing the link. This is great. We can all do it. It really is an impossible and it's your democratic right to write to your elected members and say, okay, you want to be my councillor in the May elections. Let's talk about mental health for young people and emotionally healthy schools. Is that easy? And we're going to send you information for those that sign up today on also steps on how you can have that conversation. We really, I think, I would be really surprised if people don't want to join that pledge. Amazing. Yay. Thank you so much. I think we're going to go. I could talk forever, so you need to tell me when to stop.
Let's let people go, Claudia, but thanks so much. Thanks, John, and everyone for hosting the event.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.